On this episode, we sit down with Dean Lindal, the co-founder of the International Deal Gateway. In addition to being a triathlon finisher, husband, father to five, and an advisor to the Thomas Edison Foundation, Dean was the founding manager of the Entrepreneurs Organization, better known across the globe as the EU. There he opened 90 chapters around the globe and had the unique opportunity to learn firsthand the attributes of very successful entrepreneurs from different cultures. Today we talk about his most impactful entrepreneurial learnings, how we must have a process around innovation, and much, much more. Enjoy the episode. Dean, thanks for joining us this morning.
Yep.
Excited to have you with us. And obviously know you're engaged in a pretty big project right now with International Deal Gateway. A lot of years of experience with YPO, EO, probably worked with thousands of entrepreneurs globally over the years. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and what you're doing today with International Deal Gateway?
Yeah, for sure. I've kind of had a passion about entrepreneurship and just networking and connecting from, way back in university when I started the student entrepreneurship club there. And I don't know, it's probably been a 30-year passion that kind of aligns with my values, because if you think of entrepreneurs, you can't be negative if you're an entrepreneur, right? Because I think what I've found over the years, the last 30 years being around some of the most successful entrepreneurs, they always find a way, right? They come up against a roadblock and their house or credit cards are maxed, they're on the line, and, they just find a way and they're positive. It's kind of, I found over the years traveling to about 50 countries, opening up EO, YPO, just entrepreneurship. It's kind of an international language, which cuts down, barriers and borders. You can be battling payroll in Tokyo or Des Moines, Iowa, right? You've got that commonality and experiences. So I've just loved it, right? And so, a lot of years helping support and build the EO organization, and, was fortunate to spend some time with Michael Dell and just learn about him, and then some years at YPL, and what we've built with Deal Gateway. I suppose it's just an evolution of that process of something that I'm passionate about, and that's just chatting with entrepreneurs, investors, and just making connections. And what we've done with Deal Gateway, I think we've kind of digitized that process to really accelerate virtual deal flow and virtual connections kind of on a global basis. So it's been pretty fun.
Yeah, I saw you recently opened in Australia and a couple of locations internationally. So congratulations on that. And
Yeah, thanks.
excited to see the expansion of that. Having worked with entrepreneurs over all these years, I'm sure you've identified a bunch of traits that differentiates, successful entrepreneurs from those who maybe struggle a little bit more, and all the different variations in between. What have you seen from the Michael Dells of the world to other entrepreneurs you've dealt with? What are some of the key characteristics you've found within entrepreneurs that have experienced success?
For sure. So I was with Michael in Tokyo, would have been, 98 after we launched the EL chapter there, and there was 20 of us, and he walked into the room, with his entourage. Great guy. They had a translator, the head of Dell Asia, and a few assistants, and he sat up the front, and it was great. He spoke, it was simultaneous translation, and I asked him a question: what motivates you to get up in the morning? And he said, I enjoy seeing the lives of my employees change for the better. It wasn't to go make a gazillion dollars. It wasn't to go do the next acquisition. It wasn't to see the stock price, go through the roof, right? And I truly believe, I don't think he was giving me a line. So that's probably, if I think about successful entrepreneurs, right, that are really fulfilled, right, to just have joy and passion and fun, they definitely have a transformative purpose beyond just making money, right, first and foremost, right? And I think you probably see this play out more and more, over the last 2 or 3 years when we look around at, the economy in the world. So transformative purpose, I would say, at the top. Second, I think it comes down to passion. Right? Find something. It's probably cliche. You probably hear that in Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur magazine, but really drilling into your passion and almost what your unique ability is, right? And I guess the question is practically, how do you figure out what you're passionate about, and how do you figure out what your unique ability? So I've done that kind of a few times, right? My gut or check is like, is this something that I have fun with? It makes me laugh. It gives me energy. You know, it's something that, man, if I think about it, I would do it for free because I'm just getting so much energy. You know, it's almost like a drug, right? You know, it becomes addictive, right? And so that it's not work, right? You're just getting to that flow state. So you just got to find what that is, right? You know, and for me, right, it's just chatting with entrepreneurs, being curious, continual learner, right? And so I think for me, right, I'm right within my flow kind of in sweet spot. And then, you know, another book that I recommend, I read is called Strengths Finder, right? And I'm sure it's still out there. And that was just a fantastic kind of book to read. You can do a self-assessment and really just understanding yourself because, you know, you might think you're a go-getting entrepreneur and founder and you can do it on your own, but maybe you're more the analytical type and you know, might need to surround yourself with great partners or advisors just to complement that team. And then third thing that comes to mind, guys, remember at university, I read this book. It was called Fighting to Win, right? I'm a big fan of Japanese culture. I've kind of grown up around it with my dad being Canada's national women's volleyball coach and hosting the Japanese. And I just find that culture very interesting. But this book it was called Fighting to Win. And the Japanese samurai had this thing called Bushido. And it's basically what is your gut reason, you know, for living and doing what you do. And yeah, if you can pick up that book, highly recommend it. As a segue, just for your viewers, if you have a chance to follow some of the blogs of Yoshiro Hori, he's one of my advisors in Japan, #1 venture capitalist in Japan, and he's got the #1 business school there. He's done a lot of writing around that subject, and I think he's probably written some things on practical things to figure out what your gut Bushido is. So anyways, back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. You know, it's funny because we spend so much time domestically thinking about our own cultures. You know, one of the experiences you've had internationally, you know, with all the entrepreneurs you've met is, and it begs the question, you've connected a little bit to the Japanese culture. What is the biggest difference between the Japanese culture and business versus the American one? Because I know there's a lot of differences, but from an entrepreneurial lens, entrepreneurs in Japan versus entrepreneurs in North America, what are some of the fundamental differences there?
It's interesting. The entrepreneurs that I met are kind of very similar. Differences, I would say, maybe more methodical, maybe more structured and process driven, and they've got a longer view, right? I think the Japanese tend to look out 50, 100 years. I think us in North America, I don't know, it could be driven by, you know, the stock market and CNBC News coming at us all day about what does the next quarter look like, right? You know, you got to make profits. So I think, yeah, Japanese just have a long view. I think they like to go really deep on relationships and just take time, right? And you know, for any of your entrepreneurs that are watching this, I would look into Japan as an interesting market, right? If any of your viewers have some interesting products or niches, I think it's an overlooked kind of market. You know, on one of our Deal Gateway calls, we had one of our members there. He's the top foreign entrepreneur in Japan. I think he's on his 18th startup, been there 40 years. But he mentioned that within Japan corporations, you know, they're sitting on a lot of cash. I think it's a few trillion in cash, and they're patient investors. And so for us, just thinking from a gateway perspective, and sorry if I'm going on a bit of a tangent, we see there kind of being a great opportunity in Japan for attracting investment from Japan, and actually Japan kind of as a market to kind of go into, you know, second, third largest economy. Everybody has thought about China, now India. But if you can, I think if you can be patient and find great partners there, if you've got something unique, you know, that can be customized and a few tweaks here and there, I think there's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs there.
Yeah. And Rich, I'm sure you got a ton of questions, but I want to dive into this just a little bit because I was actually listening to a TED Talk yesterday about the long-term stock exchange, and they
Oh
were
yeah,
actually
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about how, exactly what you just said. Here in America, it is, what is your quarterly plan? Maybe
yeah,
what's your year plan, and then what's your 3 to 5 year plan? That's the way
yeah,
we look at it.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
interesting to hear in Japan, they're thinking, what's our 50 to 100 year plan?
Yeah, that's
How we're going to
interesting.
grow the business, right? I mean, it's so different, and so interesting to hear about.
Well, just on that, guys, I'm sure you know the name Brad Feld, Foundry Group, co-founder of Techstars. He took Fitbit public, Zynga. So I've known Brad for 30 years. I think they just raised, $750 million fund, and he's been very, very astute at his thought leadership on what it takes to build entrepreneurial ecosystems and communities, and his passion, right? And this is another subject I don't know if we'll get into, but around mental health and mental wellness for entrepreneurs. So him and I kind of aligned around that cause of, just being out there and being open on, entrepreneurship and the stress and the pressure and some of the different mental health aspects that can kind of go along with that. But just coming back to your point about looking out 50 years, Brad would, I think, be, an anomaly here in North America. So he moved from Boston to Boulder, Colorado, and he charted out kind of a 20-year vision for Boulder, right? How can we create this entrepreneurial kind of ecosystem? And I think Boulder is amongst the highest concentration of startups in the world. And for any of your viewers, just some great books that Brad has written. I think one's called Entrepreneurial Ecosystems. So I think it's a great, great book. And then his latest book, I think, is some of their findings that they've found just with their ecosystem work that they've done. And then, the last thing I'll say about Brad, if you've got any investors that are watching this podcast, I think that he has got just a great lens and filter for how he looks at the world and how he comes up with a hypothesis. So, one of his investment hypotheses is, this is going back 4 or 5 years, human-centric kind of computing, like Fitbit and this, that, and the other. And so he's got a hypothesis that this has got legs, say 20 years into the future. And he starts thinking about, how can I put network effect around that hypothesis and look at the ecosystem around that particular investment thesis to, drive partners, to drive deal flow, to drive investment, to drive thought leadership. And so I think he's one of the best, best in the world, at doing that. But frankly, that model, I mean, that could be replicated in our own backyard.
Yeah.
Right. So anyways, just wanted to share that. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Great. You had named a couple of companies and people who are fairly well known. Can you, something you probably don't do often, can you name drop for us a few of the companies and people who you've worked with? And if you can think of a pattern of something you've learned from some of those either companies or people that would be useful to entrepreneurs, something about what they do or how they think. And again, just some of the name dropping on where did this stuff come from that you've seen the patterns from? Yeah, I mean, in your travel of 20 plus years and 50 countries, and you've seen so many people, would love to get a taste of that, the breadth of that experience.
Yeah, so Ernie Higa, right, Japan, he brought Domino's Pizza to Japan, Wendy's Hamburgers. He was a strategic advisor on economic policy to Bill Clinton. And so what did I learn from him? I worked hand in hand with him to open up Entrepreneurs Organization in Japan. And I guess it was a real lesson for me that, the world's a big place, and what works in LA, how we built EO and as a company is not going to work in Japan. And Ernie shared the example of how, Domino's Pizza, great company in the US, but the amount of customization that had to go in to making sure it worked in that market. So I think that was, to me, that was a great lesson, that it's not one size fit all, right? It's how do you customize? How do you speak to your audience? how do you tap in and be in tune with your audience? And so Ernie did that with Domino's. He certainly helped us with EO as we made some major tweaks just to make sure that there was the right product market fit for that audience. Building on that, I spent some time, I don't know if you guys know Lululemon. Chip Wilson, he's one of our most successful entrepreneurs here in Canada. And I think, Lululemon as a brand, the key to their growth, I think they were so in tune with their customer, right? And I guess practically, what was one of the things that he had top of mind for him, customer is king, and not necessarily doing surveys, like these outbound surveys, right, to get data back. They actually trained up their team to listen to the customers while they were in the store. So on a daily and a weekly basis, they were mining kind of real-time data from their frontline people, whether it was listening in the change room or actually physically chatting with them on the floor. So I would say, those two things. Let me try and think of a few others that kind of come to mind. I go back to Japan and I just love Yoshito Hori, because here's a guy, big company, Sumitomo Corporation, sent him to Harvard back in the 90s. So he was working for the big company, got his Harvard education, got pumped up in America, then I'm going to go back and be an entrepreneur, created a business plan, went back to the big company, said, this is what I'm going to do. And they said, no. So he said, okay, I'm going to leave with $5,000 in his pocket. He put an ad for this employee training kind of workshop on a weekend in a paper, and he waited for the phone to ring, right? So a bit of an anomaly. And, 25 years later is the #1 venture capitalist in Japan. He's got the #1 performing business school. But I've learned so much from this guy, just traveling throughout Asia and around the world, and a couple practical things. There's this thing called adversity quotient, right? And it's just so important, like if you're going to be an entrepreneur, that you have that. And how do you build it up, right? You've got to fail your way to success, right? Like you've got to fail your way to success. I'll probably get back to talking about Thomas Edison, but Yoshi, and for any of your entrepreneurs that have got kids, I remember seeing this stat, the number of people that want to be entrepreneurs in their late teens and early 20s is dramatically dropped, right? And it's directly correlated to a certain degree helicopter parents who don't allow their kids to fail, right? So just kind of going on a tangent, but I think whatever we can do, right, as entrepreneurs and leaders to build up adversity quotient in our kids, sports, or letting them try businesses and fail their way to success. But one of the key things that I think I learned from Yoshito Hori as he was building his business, he said, there's me in the center, and I need to kind of identify who my stakeholders are, right? Whether that's employees, shareholders, advisors, customers, and he drew on a flip chart him, and then he looked at all those different stakeholders, and he just on a daily and weekly and monthly basis, he figured out, what was, and they were key to driving his business forward, what was a win-win situation with all those different stakeholders. I think, as you're growing your business, just what I've seen other people utilize that. If you can methodically kind of systematize at least that stakeholder kind of engagement and management process and build a cadence around that. It's kind of the science of getting things done through other people, but at the same time, making sure there's a win-win. Anyways, I kind of rambled on a bit. Don't know if that answered the question.
That's great. I'm curious with your involvement in EO, could you put a plug in for it on just with our listeners on what does EO provide people? And then after just that plug, I'm curious on anything that maybe you've changed your mind on as it relates to your orientation to EO and what it provides, just something you've changed your mind on over the years.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, EO, great organization. I helped them open 90 chapters, and, for founders, right? I think for anybody that's a founder and just wants comfort, support, friends, experience sharing on common issues, kind of a global outlook. Um, it's the Napoleon Hill classic, Think and Grow Rich, right? Surround yourself with great people that are moving in the same direction as you. You know, my dad's got a saying, you're the sum of the 5 or 6 friends that you surround yourself with. So EO is great for company founders, just around that. And I think if you're an entrepreneur and not in a kind of a mastermind peer group where you can on a regular basis present, various challenges that are affecting you and your business, whatever it is, I got to take my business to the next level. This is where I'm at. And within a room, get people that can share relevant experiences, what they've done in the past. Like that's priceless.
Powerful.
Yeah, no, it's powerful. Good group.
Anything you've changed your mind on? Just curious as to something at one point where you felt a particular way that you feel differently now. If not, nothing comes to mind. That's okay.
No, but give me an example. Or just to...
Well, an example would be, hey, at one point I thought we needed 8 people in a group to have a mastermind group, and I've changed my mind. I think you actually need 3, and here's why. Or
interesting.
Anything related to just an approach to networking or peer groups that is a learning lesson that you've kind of changed your orientation to.
It's interesting, right? I think like most mastermind peer groups, they say like 8 to 10, right? I think that there's a way to do it virtually through some of the different tools that we have, Zoom chats, a good moderator, follow-up notes, and connecting where you can have larger groups and still have that peer experience. Yeah, for sure. So I've been able to do that just within our community, have groups upwards of kind of 20 and just be really efficient in an hour, and people walk away with challenges solved, deals connected on, opportunities. I think the other thing that I'll share is this. That's been an aha for me in the last 4 or 5 years. Everybody talks about this word innovation and where do new ideas come from, right? And there's a science behind it. It's how Elon Musk learns. It's how Thomas Edison learned, right? It's rapidly introducing new patterns of thinking into your brain, and not just from Des Moines, Iowa, not to pick on you, Rich, but from multiple different areas and multiple different disciplines, gender, and then also cultures, because it's a big world out there. And what I found, and I love it. I love learning from different cultures. I love about learning about different business models in India. And I would encourage anybody on this call just to somehow tap into webinars in India, somehow follow what's going on in the tech ecosystem in India. I think they've got the most fintech startups in the world, right? And some of these different ecosystems around the world where you create a process to infuse new ideas, right? And I just guarantee you start to do that, it's going to give you little tweaks on your current business that you just say, where did that come from? Well, that came from learning about this particular business in Bangalore that's just absolutely smoking and growing, and I had no idea about. So that for me is a bit of an aha, right? You've got these different peer networks and they talk about, yeah, we're global and this, that, and the other, but how can you extract, I guess, some learning value out of that you can apply in my business here in Victoria, BC, to make it better? And I truly believe that's just introducing new patterns of thinking and learning about new businesses globally. And with us being virtual, right, it's very easy to do.
I love that. The quote I heard from you is create a process to infuse new ideas.
Yeah.
I often feel like unless there's a process that's iterative, that you can rely on, innovation sometimes stalls at the entrepreneurial level. So to create a process and surround yourself with the people who are going to be really good in a process that you can extract new ideas from, and almost like a a maker of a clay pot, I picture, that you have kind of different hands on it, putting different things together, that you would never have gotten that innovative idea unless you had those people in that room to collaborate in that way. So important.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I know you guys are from the US, and so obviously you're familiar with Thomas Edison. So I sit on the advisory board of the Thomas Edison Innovation Organization out of Newark. And I've been involved with them for 20 years. And you know, not a lot of people know about just the stats behind Edison and what he did. So he had 1,098 patents. He started 100 companies before he was 40, and he invented 3 major industries: motion pictures, recorded sound, and light. And according to my Edison friends, what he did, his inventions, still account for 15% of the gross domestic product of the US, right? And he poured all his money, you know, back into his inventions, but he still died in today's terms, you know, a billionaire. And we put together a, you know, I'm 20 years ago, man, maybe we should resurrect it. We put together a learning awards program, and then this traveling learning seminar around 3 key Edison principles, right? And how he was able to do what he did. And we talked about it before, right? And that was fail your way to success, right? You know, Mike Biddle, MBA Polymers, if your viewers have a chance to study him, but there was the guy who battled for 20 years, lived off craft dinner, and he kind of cracked the code to be able to recycle any type of plastic. But he said if he hadn't failed, right, and that failure led to getting more data to fine tune, if he had given up, he would have never got there. So I suppose there's a process. You've got to be, I guess you've got to be okay with failure, but have a process. Edison had a process where he would systematically document those failures, you know, in writing. I think a lot of the successful people just throw out their own failure way to success, go, go, go. But to your point, Rick, having a process around, you know, that risk capital or failing your way to success. And then the second thing that Edison was the master of was stop innovating and start playing, right? So the guy had fun. In his invention factories in West Orange, New Jersey, they used to have orchestra nights. They used to have a pet bear, you know, running around, and they just made the process of entrepreneurship and invention fun. And then his last principle, and you know, I think about this, he was 90% deaf. I don't know if you guys know that, but he invented recorded sound.
Wow.
Because he listened with his teeth, right? And so, yeah, you know, there's probably something in that, right? You know, limitation is the springboard of greater creativity. And, you know, oftentimes you see the greatest breakthrough when you're like, for a startup, you know, when you're down to your last fighting to make payroll, right? You figure it out, right? You just keep going and you find a way, right? Oftentimes, companies that are just flush with cash, or I saw it up here in Canada, industries that are just flush with cash, they end up getting fat and they stop being hungry. So.
And what was that last principle?
Limitation is the springboard to greater creativity.
Got it.
You know, sorry, I read it. Your viewers would find this entrepreneur interesting. Chetan Mani from India. So he was one of the first guys to create the electric car, the Riva electric car, sold out to Mahindra. And he said he got the breakthrough for the storage battery from getting outside the factory and just playing with his son and his remote control car. So just taking yourself outside the office and doing something totally crazy and different. He found the breakthrough, and now he's got, I think his latest company is probably close to #1 in the world for electric vehicle kind of charging stations. They just got a big investment from Bosch. So.
Yeah. Hey, Dean, I was thinking about, you know, fail early, fail often. You know, failure leads to success. You know, you learn a lot through that. And I was thinking about the adversity quotient. And certainly, I'm sure there's a lot of entrepreneurs today, or even people that had, you know, comfortable jobs in corporations that either lost their jobs during this pandemic, or their companies are struggling during this pandemic. as an entrepreneur, it takes that sometimes that adversity quotient, to your point, to get back up and get back in and take those learnings and keep going. And I'm sure you've experienced a lot through your years, entrepreneurs who failed and maybe are sitting there going, okay, now what do I do? How do I, what have you seen has been the key component of entrepreneurs overcoming that adversity quotient and going, okay, I'm getting back in again. I just had this big failure. I experienced a failure myself for the past couple of years. And it took me a year of sabbatical, a year of thinking what I wanted to do next. It took a little bit to kind of get back and going again. What do you see as the biggest key to overcoming that adversity quotient?
Probably mentors. Yeah. I mean, that would be the top of mind for me. Just mentors, maybe 15, 20 years older than you, mentors, definitely peer groups and encouragement. And, I think just recharting kind of a vision that gets you excited. I'm just trying to think anything else. I mean, I've got a sports analogy from me. So my dad and I were the first father-son entry in the Ironman triathlon, the North American Championships in Penticton. He did it when he was 50. I did it when I was 18. He finished that year. I didn't finish that year, top 10 after the bike, and then I couldn't finish the run. He was the only guy who got 3 finishing photos because he was going so slow across the line. It was easy for them to, as a joke. But I went back the next year, right? And I had a vision to win it. And, I was first out of the water, first after the bike. My swim bike was the 7th fastest done in the world. Set the bike record and led the number 3 ranked guy in the world. He was about 10 years older than me, to about 7 miles into the run. And I tore my Achilles tendon. And I was going to quit, right? Like I was going to pack it in, right? And I go, man, this is too painful. And I was very fortunate that my dad came out in the race course, and he came alongside me and he helped me re-anchor my vision to finish. And the re-anchor my vision to finish was, hey son, if you don't finish, your bike record won't stand, right? And so I don't know what he was tapping into, ego, but he just helped me just course correct, tape my ankle up, and the marathon I walked it 7.5 hours and I finished, right? And so if I look at business, I see that all around. And maybe some of your viewers out there, they're kind of, they're struggling, or maybe their businesses, gone out of business. And I think more than ever, we need mentors, we need friends, we need support. If you have the opportunity to mentor and just an encouraging and kind word, right? I got to tell you, just a small, encouraging, kind word can change the trajectory of an individual, right? It's not rocket science stuff. Harvey Mackay, if you have a chance to read his book, Mackay Envelope Corporation, he wrote the book Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive, and a few other different books, YPO guy, and I've known him about 30 years. He sent me this, and it helped change my trajectory. He sent me this handwritten note. Hey, great to see you recently, and keep going. And he sent me this quote. You go Google it. It's called The Value of a Smile, right? Something like, it's rest to the weary, right? It doesn't cost anything, right? And so, I think that I think that we can do our part, right? It doesn't take much, to mentor and just encouraging word here. And so for me, right, doing the Ironman, right, when I fell down like that, my dad was a mentor, and it was an encouraging word here to, I couldn't see the forest through the trees, so much pain. And it was somebody coming alongside me to say, hey, here's the value prop for continuing to keep going. And you know what? I would be kicking myself if I hadn't, right? Because I've got the video coverage, and I've got 5 boys, and I've shared it with them as a life lesson. Hey man, don't give up. Like, don't give up, right? I think for entrepreneurs that are out there right now, don't give up. For entrepreneurs that are doing really well and successful, see if you can double down on mentoring more people and encouraging more people. I suppose that would be my message.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that story with your father. That's very motivating even to listen to. And you're right. Like sometimes you need that person who's going to help you keep moving through those difficult moments and see the whole forest from the trees. As an entrepreneur, sometimes you're alone and you're going through it, or you're in a triathlon, you're on your own, you're going through it. And to have that, I appreciate you sharing that story.
Yeah, no worries. Yep.
Dean, I've been taking notes the whole time. I'm loving listening to you. I got 2 pages of notes.
Oh gosh.
I want to highlight a couple things that you said early on. The 3 words I wrote down were networking, passion, values. And then a little later on, 3 things that you had mentioned: transformative purpose, passion, and unique ability, and then fighting to win. A moment ago, you just mentioned having a vision to be excited. This idea around vision and passion, I would love to hear, what are you working on these days that really gets your engine going? What are you passionate about these days?
Good question. I mean, first and foremost, right, my marriage and my kids, right? So I've got 5 boys, and that gets me pumped up and kind of passionate, for sure, to get up in the morning. I've got tremendous faith, right? That it's not a come to Jesus kind of sermon, but I've got tremendous faith, and that actually gets me motivated. Reading the Bible, Psalms, Proverbs, just the ability to get up every day and just see who I can be helpful to, with prayer or whatever, just, personally and privately. So I think, those 2 or 3 things, right? I get pumped up beyond belief. As it relates to my kind of business and what gets me excited to get up in the morning, we've got a great team. And Liz Priestman is my co-founder. She's kind of the exact opposite of me and just kicks my butt and pushes me in directions that I didn't thought I would go. And so, and same with our other team members. We're very opposites and complementary. And I don't think I've had this much growth, right, as an entrepreneur and an individual the last 3 years, with just founding this company with some mentors and some great people. And it's been difficult along the way, but it's been fantastic, because I've seen, through this interaction as an entrepreneur and being in a group with such opposite personalities, it's forced me to just get better, like with my behavior, right, and leadership, and that's actually translated into my family life as well. So I'm pretty passionate about that. Also with, just what we're doing with the business, right? I just think that we can help entrepreneurs, right, more and more. And I see that, every Monday when we have these things called deal huddles and deal talks with 20 entrepreneurs and investors around the world, moderated, and hearing about the challenges, hearing about the new deals and opportunities, and actually seeing right in front of my face people connect and get things done. So it's addictive, for sure. And and lastly, right, I see our, just with our business, our transformative purpose. I know that entrepreneurs create jobs. I know that entrepreneurs drive things forward and are very positive. And I think in small part, just what we're doing with the business, I think we're a catalyst to connect, communities, to connect countries, to connect opportunities, just to keep things moving forward. So, yeah, I'm excited every day. I'm a curious individual, right? And so I don't know if I'm a deal junkie, but just hearing about, the last 6 months, right? We've really, as a business, we've really leaned in kind of on the virtual side, just to connect investors, entrepreneurs, and different deals, and just seeing, it must be a dozen new businesses that I've seen started. Capital still being raised, just kind of the M&A process. It's new for me, right? I built peer networks, and now kind of on the deal side and connecting people. So I'm a lifelong learner. My dad instilled that into me from 8 years old, where he would bring in the next great self-help book or article and So it's just, I get a lot of energy and fun and passion around just continuing to learn and just that whole connecting process and being helpful. So,
Rich?
Dean, I want to make a quick pit stop that may feel out of left field a little bit, but I want to tap into your passion. I'd feel remiss if we didn't.
okay.
When you were asked about passion, you talked about first was marriage and kids, and you didn't even think about it. It was like marriage and kids, done. Can you speak to what are some of the philosophies that you ascribe to as it relates to marriage or parenting, being the father of 5 sons? And it may tie in entrepreneurially or it may not, but I know a lot of people who are listening, they're probably married and they probably have kids. And here's a guy who has the breadth of experience that you do, who's asked about his passion, and without even thinking, his passion is marriage and kids. So I'd love for you to speak a little bit about a philosophy or two you go by as it relates to marriage and or as it relates to parenting.
You know, I would say first and foremost, I have room for improvement. So I'm a work in work in progress. Look, not to just borrow a Bible verse. It's not a come to Jesus, but love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and love thy neighbor as thyself, right? And easier said than done, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. There's a business thing your viewers can probably go read about servant leadership, right? And I don't know, for whatever reason, I just have this philosophy, and I try as best I can to bring it into the marriage with my kids and give first, right? Give first, right? Rather than, what can I take? Give first to my kids. And, as it relates to my 5 boys, there was something that my mentor said to me, when I got married and started having kids. He simply said, spend time with your kids, be there when they skin their knee, right? Because it goes so quick, man. It goes so quick. So I don't know. That's what I've tried to do with my 5 boys. I know John's involved with hockey. I just tried to, I've got a saying, go 2 feet in, right? Don't be double-minded. Just go 2 feet in. And that's been my philosophy. Like, don't be zoning out like on Netflix when your boy is asking you to come outside and play hockey or do one-on-one basketball, right? I don't know. I mean, I think I always had things in balance. Like, I was very blessed to work with EO and YPO, and it was stable and afforded me the opportunity to work from home and just spend time with the kids. And then I think, as it relates to kind of, marriage, I think, again, give first and love your wife as you would yourself. Spend time together, right? There's so many distractions, guys, like in this world, business and entrepreneurship, it can easily take 80 or 90 hours of your time, or TV, or getting addicted to social media. I don't know if you guys have seen the Netflix special, The Social Dilemma.
Watching that.
Yeah, so I think you just gotta be methodical, but definitely, like for us, I'll just be, just that faith aspect, I think, has been very helpful. The other thing, I'll say about, my boys, just having them in competitive sports, has been fantastic. Ice hockey, right? I wouldn't have traded it, like just the long road trips, the plane trips. I remember we had spring hockey in Vancouver, Canada, and we had 4 of them on 4 different teams, and it was just like I was a Uber driver, right? And it was tough at the time, but I wouldn't trade that for anything. I wouldn't trade sitting on the bus with my boy, on a 10-hour road trip, for the weekend. Wouldn't trade, going with the family. I think we went on one of your guys' hockey trips, John, to Italy and Venice. I just wouldn't have traded it. And, I think you got to be 2 feet in. You got to, give first. Yeah, I don't know. Those are just some random thoughts, guys.
Well, Dean, I think, by default, you've been a great mentor to anybody that's going to listen to this podcast today. And I agree with Rich. I got a couple pages of notes myself of a lot of things that I didn't know about or I want to look into more, especially the Japanese blog and more information on that gentleman. And, I think, it's interesting you talk about a father being there when his kid scrapes his knee, and you think about the father, when you tore your hamstring in the triathlon, doing that for you, and just really interesting to kind of hear that full circle back again, and give us a good refresher on what it means to be a parent. And you are a mentor. You are a mentor as a parent. You're a mentor as a CEO of a company. You're a mentor, throughout life with friends and peers and everything else. So I really appreciate that. And I'd certainly encourage anybody listening to this as well to go visit the International Deal Gateway as an entrepreneur, because again, it strikes me that you can develop great peer networks, whether it be on LinkedIn or International Deal Gateway or other platforms where you can talk to like-minded entrepreneurs about the deals you need to make, whether it be selling your company, getting capital. And if you try and go it alone, you can make a lot of mistakes. And why not gain experience from those that have been there? So I really appreciate your time today. I think it was very informative, and
Thank you,
I'm
Dean.
sure anybody listening to it's going to get a lot.
Fun. Good questions. Great questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for your investment in the conversation, and those that'll listen to this, they'll get a ton out of it, I'm sure. I sure did, and looking forward to reviewing my notes and digging in further.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
All right. I got to return the favor and interview you guys.